As WCW's flagship show for almost 6 years, Nitro was once a raw-beating powerhouse that yielded countless classic moments. The problem was that for every classic moment, Lex Luger's shocking debut for example, there were 10 bollocks ones that turned heads for all the wrong reasons. At their least harmful, these vomit hurricanes gave us something to laugh at, but at their worst, they pushed WCW closer to oblivion, and you, dear viewer, have probably done everything in your power to repress all memory of them. Let's take a look at some of these forgotten disasters. I'm Andy for WhatCulture Wrestling, and here are 10 disturbing WCW Nitro moments you totally don't remember. Number 10. Rick Steiner threatens Chucky from the 12th of October 1998. Want to know about the time that tough guy Rick Steiner threatened to kick a toy doll's ass all over the arena? Well, here we go. Chucky, who had a new movie to promote, naturally, appeared during an in-ring promo with Steiner. It was all very, very silly, with many threats of violence and a brief flirtation with wrestling's first ever wrestler versus toy match. Fortunately, not even WCW were stupid enough to think that Steiner versus Chucky was a good shout, and so we never got a teased Halloween Havoc nightmare that, for the briefest of moments, actually seemed possible. Steiner did encourage Chucky to bring his plastic hoop to the ring for a whipping, and he did so without a shred of humour. To Rick, this was 100% real, because how dare a char-grilled plastic twerp interrupt his promo time? Number 9. Kevin Nash is Randy Savage's big sexy girlfriend on the 20th of April, 98. WCW's diluted NWO infighting angle continued here, with Hollywood Hogan and Savage throwing barbs throughout Nitro's 3 hours. All relatively standard stuff until Hollywood went Holly weird on everyone, saying Kevin Nash was, and I quote, Randy's big sexy girlfriend. Okay then, Terry, if you say so. Not only did Hogan's words make no sense in the context of the angle, they were just unnecessary. Sure, this was an era where promo delivery mattered more than content, but there were no warning shots fired before this. Hulk just sort of intimated that Randy and Kevin were an item, and yeah, it was odd. He did it more than once as well, almost as if he hadn't heard the reaction that he wanted from the fans. That's probably because they had no clue what was going on, or why WCW were trying to forcibly suggest that Nash was Randy Savage's lass. Odd one, for sure. Number 8. Oklahoma gets misogynistic on the 7th of February, 2000. At best, Ed Ferrara's parody of Jim Ross was wash, and at worst, it was just insulting. Oklahoma would visibly slant his face in order to belittle JR's real-life battle with Bell's palsy. It was really cheap stuff, and made worse when WCW decided to make him a full-on misogynist. That's why he feuded with Medusa to the enjoyment of absolutely nobody. This particular episode saw him invite one Dr. Jeter out for a little chat about Medusa's body, shaming her for undergoing various cosmetic surgeries. Because, I guess, shallow problematic men are gonna be shallow problematic men. Of course, because of the era, it all played out before a crowd who hooted and hollered like AJ Styles at a Kid Rock concert. It has aged like a gallon of milk left in the sun for a decade. Number 7. Oklahoma commentates piñata on a pole, the 15th of November, 99. Oh cool, more Oklahoma. Well, strap yourselves in, because here's another absolute belter. This episode of Nitro was a Vince Russo special, and given his fetish for poles, Russo booked the thinly veiled, probably maybe kinda sorta xenophobic piñata on a pole match, with a bunch of Mexican wrestlers fighting it out for money. Wow. The guys involved, Juventud Guerrera, Psicosis, and others were fine workers made to work a terrible idea, and it even seemed crass back then. And to make matters worse, we had bloody Oklahoma on commentary, who was only there so that he could keep ribbing Jim Ross by screaming obnoxious bollo through his headset. Complete small-minded piss, and close to Russo at his absolute worst. Not quite though, we've got plenty more of that guy still to come. And here he is, number 6, Vince Russo corners Miss Elizabeth from the 15th of May, 2000. Russo became a heavy presence on Nitro following a supposed WCW relaunch in April, booking himself to win the world title later that year. Before that, he took a bizarre distaste for Miss Elizabeth, locking her in a steel cage with Medusa, who would, and I quote, give her the beating she deserved. Sounds like someone, whoever wrote that, wonder who it was, Vince, hates women. On this episode, Liz entered the House of Pain and found herself cornered by Medusa and Russo. Thankfully, Lex Luger was on hand to dress himself up as a technician, drop through a hole in the cage roof, and put Medusa in the torture rack. Now, I'm not sure what's more disturbing here, Russo delighting in watching Miss Elizabeth squirm, or the fact that Lex was able to concoct this plan within minutes. Russo had only made the match moments before, and that makes Luger the most resourcefully quick babyface of all time. Good on him, good guy Lex. Number 5, Scott Hall vomits on Eric Bischoff, the 14th of September, 98. 2 years before WCW booked Scott Hall's real-life demons as an angle, Hall invaded Nitro in 96 and kick-started the NWO. By late 1998, he was being penned as a struggling alcoholic who couldn't work a match without blowing chunks. This is something that Eric Bischoff would later claim to regret on his 83 Weeks podcast, and it's no wonder. Following a match with Lex Luger on this episode, Hall was confronted at ringside by some of his old buddies. Kevin Nash looked like a disappointed father as he watched his old pals struggle, and Bischoff couldn't hide his disgust, understandably, when Scott vomited all over him. Using puke as a plot device was the least of the Angle's worries, though, because away from the ring, Hall was legit straining to keep a lid on his real problems, and it was tactless for WCW to use them in that storyline. Number 4, Ric Flair in the quote-unquote mental hospital on the 26th of April, 99. Look up the word disturbing in the dictionary. What will you find? No, not Ric Flair dancing around a supposed mental hospital, as WCW called it on TV, but a description of the word disturbing, which is what this was. This nasty, insensitive skit is even harder to watch today, now that society has finally evolved to the point where we can have open, honest, and frank conversations about the severity of mental health issues. I mean, this is just straight up bollocks. We've got what's intended to be a creepy, leery old man, a bloke with food all over his face, and a superfan acting like a child in Ric's presence. Flair, who had been committed to the facility by Roddy Piper 1 week before, he was having none of it. He entered the room in his wrestling gear, danced around with his fellow patients, and hit on the staff in one of WCW's most outrageous visuals. Number 3, Viagra on a pole from the 31st of July, 2000. The story here was simple. Shane Douglas was struggling to get it up for Torrie Wilson, so WCW dangled Viagra on a pole for a match between him and Billy Kidman. That Kidman was dating Wilson away from the ring made this even weirder. Was it a rib on him? I don't know either way, but it sure was a big bag of wank. Douglas won within 4 minutes and acted like a kid on Christmas morning as he clutched the bottle of pills. Finally, the announcers beamed. The franchise could pop a boner and satisfy Torrie. The more we revisit this stuff, the more outlandish wrestling at the turn of the millennium seems. And while the thing on a thing match format peaked hilariously with Judy Bagwell on a forklift, Viagra on a pole definitely belongs in the Hall of Lame. Number 2, David Flair tries to get Stacy Keibler's blood on the 9th of October 2000. David Flair's fling with Stacy Keibler was something else. At first, it seemed like she might be the one to rescue Big Dave from his hell alongside Daphne and Crowbar. Then, in a very WCW move, Keibler became pregnant. The focus became who the father was. Was it Flair? No. Was it Buff Bagwell? Maybe, but David had to find out for sure. So, on this Nitro, he accosted Stacy in the ring and tried to jam a needle in her arm. Meanwhile, loudmouth colorman Mark Madden assured Flair that taking blood from Keibler wouldn't prove a damn thing. "We already know she's the mother, Einstein," he said before scampering away from the ring, having seemingly not got the memo. Crowbar, dressed in 1970s clobber, it's a long story, interrupted proceedings to try and calm David down. When that didn't work, Flair again tried to force plasma from Stacy's veins. This all happened in front of a bemused Australian audience who must have wished that the WWF had come through town instead. And at number 1, Randy Savage slaps Torrie Wilson on the 5th of July, 99. Ignore the fact that Randy Savage was dressed something like 2000-era Chris Jericho in this scene for a moment and focus on what happened. Macho Man, scowling, points his finger at Torrie Wilson as Gorgeous George cowers in the corner. Seconds later, Randy slapped Torrie. No, this is not a joke. In one of the worst scenes WCW ever put to tape, Savage hit Wilson and then ragdolled George out of the room. Then he returned with a balled-up fist. There's no need for insinuation here. WCW were casting Savage as a woman-beating bad guy who had succumbed to his own madness. Torrie was so taken aback by the slap that she visibly started laughing on camera, rendering the whole thing a farce. Was that the plan, or did Randy call an unfortunate audible? Whatever the truth might be, this was not cool. Domestic abuse is not something that wrestling fans want to think about when they're tuning in for light entertainment. So that's our list, but what do you guys think, and can you recall any other disturbing WCW Nitro moments that I, myself, have forgotten about? Hit us up in the comments section below, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and then follow us on Twitter at WhatCulture WWE, and myself at Andy H. Murray if you're into that kind of thing. Bye!